while going through stream today, I found a Reddit post with a Twitter post about what your Mount Rushmore for starter animes for millennials would be. And I went over this really quickly. If you see my short on it, then that was before I gave it too much thought. But as I was editing videos later today, I kind of thought about it more, thought about it over dinner, and I'm going to disagree and change my list a bit. Now, the original list had Dragon Ball, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and one empty slot for you to fill in with whatever. And that's really just a baiting tactic on Twitter. I get it. But I'm going to disagree with a little bit here. But I want to point out really fast is that the point of this was it's a starter anime, right? This should be a list of animes that got people into the fandom, not necessarily what the best is, which I think a lot of people are confusing. So keep that in mind going forward. So first of all, pretty easy is Dragon Ball Z.
Yes, 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 yes! I can win! I feel great! I can do this!
Not Dragon Ball, not Super, Dragon Ball Z. Although if you feel good for the whole series, you can. I think for most people, this is the easiest thing on the list. I think almost everyone would put this on the list above even like Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh!, which the post started with. Honestly, it was super hype. It was really easy to follow. Like, the combat was easy to follow. The story was easy to follow. Because even Super's story isn't very complicated, right? Like, and I think it had just that good amount of energy for kids where you have a good versus evil, which is really easy to follow. It made you want to be able to, like, put your hands into the air and feel like you could channel energy while yelling and your hair would get yellow. And I think it was really hype and really easy for kids to get into. So I think Dragon Ball Z is probably the biggest, like, starter anime for most millennials. That's probably the top or near the top of everyone's list. Second is Pokemon.
I wanna be the very best, like no one ever was.
Which I'm keeping to it, but I promise that's the last one on the list I'm actually keeping with. Pokemon inspire, God, it can't be understated. The animes, the video games, the card games, everyone knows Pokemon. And I think for a lot of people, even just the card game, like this is what got people into card games, which I'm not saying it was the first or the best card game, but it is what I think brought a lot of people into that fandom, which even as adults, millennials are still very into. They still like card games, and I think that actually was a little less direct, but brings people into like board games and miniatures. I really think Pokemon brought so many people in, and very importantly, it's different than Dragon Ball Z. And that's really important going forward, because if series are too similar, you kind of have to ask, well, which one really brought in more people? Because if they overlap too much, it's hard to tell. And yeah, I think Pokemon easily stands out from Dragon Ball Z very well, though. Now, for the next one, I'm going to do some honorable mentions. And I know people are going to get mad at me for some of these, but my last two on the list are not on the post. And I'm even disagreeing with some of the comments in there that were really popular. But some of these I think you can make very strong arguments for. I'm just disagreeing. You can comment, like ratio check me if you want. I don't care. So I'm going to group a few here. Honorable mentions to Trigun, Samurai Champloo, Cowboy Bebop, Yu Yu Hakusho. These series, like, they're all good, but they kind of fill the same niche and have the same energy. And I think the real question is, did any of these series really bring a lot of people into anime that Dragon Ball hadn't already brought in? I think the answer is probably not. Maybe a little bit, because I think all these series are more mature than Dragon Ball is, and that might have attracted more people as we got older. But I think really Dragon Ball brought in these people already, so I didn't include any of them on the list, but you can make arguments. Next honorable mention is Sailor Moon. And Sailor Moon is probably the most requested in the comments of the Twitter post. And I kind of get it, but I actually don't think Sailor Moon was as big in America as it was in Japan. And I can only speak kind of anecdotally on this. A lot of us people are saying like this was good to bring women in. I don't think it really was as good to bringing American women in as it was in Japan, maybe. If anything, I think Inuyasha probably brought more women into anime than Sailor Moon did. But it's like not a bad series. This is one, if someone makes an argument for it, I'm not going to hard disagree with them. It is what it is. Then I want to talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! Yu-Gi-Oh! Is actually the third on the list for the Twitter post, but I did not include it in mine. And the reason, as I mentioned before, is that the group it attracts is the same group that Pokemon attracts, and Pokemon really did it first and arguably better, right? Its big attraction was a card game, which Pokemon already brought card games to children in the U.S. And it was a monster-based game, which I'm not saying Pokemon is the only one that can do it. Don't Power World me, but yeah, I don't think Yu-Gi-Oh! Really brought in a lot of people better. I think a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Success, honestly, is tied to Pokemon breaking ground for it. Which doesn't mean Yu-Gi-Oh! Is bad. I liked Yu-Gi-Oh! As a kid. I still like it. But I don't think it really brought in anybody that Pokemon hadn't already brought in. Maybe it was like 1% more mature than Pokemon or something, and that brought people in the age, but I digress. This is actually the exact same reason that I didn't put Digimon on the list. Because the people that would have been attracted to Digimon were already there for Pokemon, really. And yeah, I don't know. The main thing I'll say for maybe the three of these is that probably did influence a lot of like millennial furries, but we're going to keep that to a different list, and I'm not doing that one. Because I don't know. Next one, and this is another one people are going to be mad about. I am not including the big three. Now I'm going to stop you really fast. Pause the video if you have to. Who are the big three in anime? If you said anything other than One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, you are wrong, and I hate you for being wrong. And I really mean this. I don't like when I hear people on Twitter talk about the big three, and they'll include things like My Hero Academia, or like Jujutsu Kaisen. Like, these series, like, they're not necessarily bad, but the term big three was coined after Dragon Ball, and that included One Piece, Naruto, and Bleach, right? You could argue these are like the new big three, and I would give you that because it's a different term. But I don't think at this point these series are bringing in new people. I think they kind of fill the same niches that like Dragon Ball and all the other like Toonami Adult Swim shows already did. Maybe I would give you a little bit on One Piece just for it was on 4Kids, so it was a different network. But Naruto and Bleach I don't think have too much to really stand on here. And again, I feel a little bit bad because a lot of the comments on that Twitter post were Sailor Moon and Naruto. Which I don't know why Naruto stands above One Piece or Bleach. I think it usually ranks like in the middle of the three, but maybe there's something I'm missing there. And last honorable mention, I don't think anybody's going to make a huge argument for this, but it actually was on my list until I started making a bullet point script for this, is I was going to include Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. If I were to make a list of like the best stories in anime, Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood would be on the list. In fact, if you like anime and haven't watched it, you should watch it. Because even though it's an older series, the story still stands up as one of the best stories ever told in anime. I really do highly recommend it. The problem is that I think it was a little bit long, and I don't think it brought new people in. I don't think people saw the characters in Full Metal Alchemist, or saw a card game or something that would bring them in. It's one of those, I think a lot of people would see like a few anime first, and when they're talking to people about what do I watch next, the generic answer was go watch Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood. Because it is good, but it didn't bring people in, which is important. Okay, my last two that are controversial, and I hate the last one's going to be super controversial, but we'll get to that in a sec. My number 3 is actually Neon Genesis Evangelion.
What's going on?
We don't know!
Which I think is a series that a lot of people have forgotten about, and I think a lot of anime watchers probably have never seen, maybe even heard of. Because I think it is the oldest thing on this list. But it's so different. I really do think it brought in a different crowd. So first of all, I think it was one of the first super popular, what I'll call like a psychological anime. And that made room for a lot of other series to follow it. If you saw like G4 Tech TV, which tried getting into anime as well and kind of failed a bit, they had their own series that were kind of psychological, and I think Neon Genesis Evangelion really paved for that. But the series, like, it had combat, which I think is really good to bring people in, but there were some episodes where there were no combat. It was entirely narrative. And I think that storytelling was actually pretty advanced for a lot of the anime we had access to in America at the time. So that helped bring in people that weren't as combat focused, but wanted a better story than what Dragon Ball offered. Which, again, I like Dragon Ball, but Dragon Ball Z's story especially, is not complicated enough. Evangelion was complicated. It was thought-provoking. It was very, existential as opposed to fighting. And I think a lot of people, it gave an appearance that anime could be artistic and serious when most Americans associated anime with Dragon Ball or later on Pokemon, which are good series, but they're not serious. They're not even close to what Evangelion was. And I think that brings in a certain type of people that we're really missing. Last one on this list, and this one, I hate saying this because I'm going to get so much flack. I saw literally 0 comments suggesting this one, but I think people have overlooked it. Also, my D&D group is going to get mad at me later today when they see this. I'm including Death Note.
I've won. Exactly as planned.
Which is a series I think a lot of people have forgotten about, but I think more importantly, people forgot how massive this was. Now, I think one of the main reasons to put Death Note on this list isn't necessarily that it was the, best storytelling, even though I did like the story. It wasn't the best idea, even though I did like the theme and idea of it. I think a lot of Death Note was timing that made it very successful. Death Note is probably the newer thing on this list, and it was kind of the 2000s gateway for people that didn't get into anime earlier. Right, so this is overlooking the people that got in with Pokemon, that got in with Dragon Ball, and they may have seen anime as something different. So they saw this, and it was, the more mature, it was the edgier anime, and I think that attracted people that thought it was very, combative the way Dragon Ball was, or overly cute the way Pokemon is. It stood out really well, and I think that brought a lot of people in. In fact, I think Death Note is one of those series that people actually sought out because the premise for it was unique enough that people were like, oh, I'll watch an episode of that and try it out. And that worked. The other thing is because it came out, I want to say it came out in 2006, but I could be wrong. The timing of that made it the kind of first anime to be really popularized on the internet. And if you wanted to watch Death Note, you could very easily. This was way before there was huge licensing and Crunchyroll. You could just Google watch Death Note and do it easily, and nobody had any problems or complaints about it because that stuff, it wasn't a thing yet. So Death Note was extremely accessible on the internet before other series were, and I think that works really well. Also, Death Note is not a super long series. I wouldn't call it short, but it's not too long. It's very bingeable. Right, you really could define Death Note into 2 smaller parts pretty well without giving any spoilers away. And I think that really attracted people because they felt like they could binge it and finish it in a day or 2. Whereas some Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood took much longer. And I think that turns away people that are new or looking to get interested without actually being invested yet. But also, I think Death Note was one of the first major animes to start getting a lot of Americanized spin-offs. It got a lot of, what are they called, AMVs, as those were becoming popular on the internet. I think there were a lot of people that were getting merchandise at the time for that. And honestly, just the real life, there were 4 IRL Death Note movies. I don't think any of them were good. But I do think that does help bring people in because it's different. It's a way to get eyes, from people that don't look at anime and be like, oh, this is a simple enough concept that is interesting enough that it could work. And I really do think a lot of Death Note is timing, not necessarily as a great series, even though I did like it. But I digress. You argue with me in the comments. That's fine. You could do that. In fact, I would actually like to hear some comments if you disagree with something or if there's a series you think I just missed. Wait, because maybe there's people that didn't watch Toonami, they had something else in their region, and yeah, they have a different list. The other thing too, I tried really hard to do this. I wanted to include either a sports anime or a slice of life anime, but I couldn't really come up with anything that I thought was as impactful as the 4 I listed. Now, also, I'm not really into sports. I don't I can't remember the last slice of life anime I actually watched, so it may just like be biasy, and that's fine. If you want to say that I'm just biased against Sailor Moon, you can do that. You're probably not even entirely wrong, but that's what the comments are for. So that's it. Let me know what you think of this. If you have any questions or ideas for other videos, I don't usually do these long format videos. I usually do shorts. So if you like it, let me know, and maybe I'll do more. Do that by following. I want followers on YouTube. That's about it. Oh, and like, do YouTube stuff. You know the drill. I don't need to tell you. That's it. I'll see you. It's past midnight here, so I'm going to go to bed and upload this in the morning. Goodbye.